I'm Sami Gardner, and this is the Career Kickstart Show. It's a big day for the podcast because we have Beck Power herself up on the show. Now, if you don't know this online mover and shaker, Beck Power is the maven behind a number of different products and services like the Academy of Arbitrage, Queer Hustle, Quickfire Funnels, Nomad Me, Nomad Fly, Nomad, I don't know, popsicles. It could be anything. So she's here, there, and everywhere. I'm not really encapsulating all the stuff that Beck Power does. So how about, Beck, you just tell me what you do and how you do it.
That sounds like a plan. That was a lot of things, which is why recently, hi, I'm Beck, everyone. Thanks for that amazing intro, Sammy G. Doesn't get much better than that. I recently simplified a lot of the stuff that I do because of that ginormous list. I was like, wait a second, this is too many websites. This is too much stuff. What's happening? So I kind of turned it into umbrellas and put things underneath of each one. And now it's like way more organized. So I am a performance coach and I run two businesses. So the first one is called Queer Hustle. It's basically products and experiences for queer women in business, queer women entrepreneurs. You may have seen me at the event that we had in LA.
I did. I was there.
You were, and you were just incredible. And if you're listening to this and you've never heard Sammy G speak at anything, I highly recommend you go to the nearest thing.
Aw, thank you.
Yeah, you're amazing. So that's one of my businesses, Queer Hustle, and we do an event every year. Once a year, we do a conference for queer women entrepreneurs. It's the only one that I know of. So it's the first, last, best, and also worst, I suppose. Anyway, I'm also doing a business called Nomad Me, which is an umbrella, and it's for people starting out on their digital nomad journey. And it's really all about remote work and how to do it. So really a lot more the business side of things than the travel side of things, which I find most digital nomad stuff is all about the travel, although there's a few travel surprises in there too. So those are my two main projects. And this year I'm focusing on speaking. I want to be a speaker one day. I want to be as good as Sammy G.
Oh, well, you know what? You did a heck of a job, Beck, because for people who are listening who might have listened to that, and you're getting a picture, if you don't already know, Beck, of a puzzle of unique and interesting traits and things, because what I like about Beck is that Beck is a bull. Beck is
literally a Taurus. Yep.
Yes. And I think that is fab because what Beck does is she charges for her goals. Now, you might have think about the digital nomad thing. Beck has been doing that for a long time. You know, that's how she started doing the nomad stuff. But you have quite the interesting life journey. What I really want to talk about today is not that Beck does all this entrepreneur stuff, but just the mindset of it all. Because what I like about Beck, especially for Queer Hustle, is that there are a lot of people who are like, who can do a international conference in LA in 3 months? Beck did it. So we're going to talk about putting the mindset on things, because if you like it, you put a mindset on it. And now, Beck, just tell us a little bit more of the personal journey, because you doing the digital nomad thing, you didn't have like a trust fund. You weren't one of them Bali girls or something like that. Tell us a little bit more, Beck.
Yeah, so it's been definitely a long journey with a lot of ups and downs. I left New Zealand in like 2013 maybe, and I went to Thailand. I had $700 at that time, and I went straight to Chiang Mai. I tried to do my thing like people do, and it failed. And I was like, fuck this, I'm going to Australia to like get a real job. And then I went to Australia and I realized that I was unemployable. I literally do not want to work for anyone else. And I didn't know how to make it work on my own either. So I was just broke and unhappy for like a year. It's like, how am I going to do that? And decided to go back to Thailand and make a go of it. There were many things that happened, but eventually I started selling things online and figured out how to do things. And the catalyst that made that happen was realizing that I was saying a lot of things. I talk a lot of shit. Oh, I'm going to do this. I'm working on that. I'm going to do blah. And then I didn't actually do the things, because I think you get the dopamine hit or whatever from telling someone the thing. And then when you actually need to go and do it, you've already had the hit from it. So you just don't bother doing the actual things. And so when I started being successful, or like even a little bit successful in Thailand, working online, was when I was like, oh shit, I actually have to take action and do the things. And then once I started taking massive action, I realized this is my jam. You know, I'm going to keep doing this stuff. I'm going to focus on mindset stuff. And that's really one of the things that I like to teach. It's why I do performance coaching for people, because it's all mindset. And once you have the right mindset, you can actually, in a way, trick yourself into doing things that people seem to think is impossible. I even thought it might be impossible for me to organize the conference that I did in those 3 months. I mean, certainly it's not something that most people would try to consider. Like, I got told a bunch of times to like put it off, do it next year, take more time to do it, lots of different things. And I was like, you know what? No, I can do this if I take enough action, if I don't give up. And it fucking worked.
It did. And what I like about how you do mindset is that I've had a number of mindset people on here, but they go the more like woo-woo metaphysical route to it. But you're like, okay, you can get all this stuff done by just doing the thing, by just throwing the action. What do you think stops people from not just a dopamine hit, but just finishing stuff? Because there's a lot of stuff in mindset that has to do with the making it easy, having it be completely 100% aligned. And your thing is more like you want something, muscle through some of this discomfort, push outside that comfort zone, and it will eventually expand. But why do you think there's a lot of folks, even high achievers, that shy away from this?
I think it's not very sexy to go, okay, you just need to like call 200 people. You know? No one wants to ever hear that. That's not a thing that's like a popular topic for me. People are like, wow, tell me more about how I can do that. Like, it's just hard work. And while I do believe in a lot of the slightly woo stuff, I believe in it from a different angle than a lot of people. For example, manifesting. I've heard people be like, oh, manifesting's bullshit. Like, you're never going to get anywhere if you sit on the couch and just think about things. And while I believe that, there's no way that I would have done Career Hustle if I would have just been thinking about it. It's just impossible. Like, you can't say that that would work, and it wouldn't have. However, I do think that if I hadn't used my brain and my mindset to think about what was possible, you know, doing things faster than usual, the best people to contact, if I wouldn't have been thinking about the big picture stuff, then it wouldn't have been possible either if I was just, you know, building a website and working on that every day. That's not the right stuff. So I really do think that there's some kind of combination that you need of both thinking clearly and being grateful. I did meditations every single day for about 3 months. I did visualizations every single day. I stood in my bathroom and looked in the mirror, and I imagined that I was standing in front of the group of people at Queer Hustle, and I was like, thank you so much for coming. I could not have done this without you. It's really, really amazing that we did this. And then on the day that it was Queer Hustle, I stood in front of those people and said the same thing. And so I think there are elements of the woo that are helpful, but I think people shy away from the hard work.
And also, one thing that I noticed about you is that you're really good at prioritizing, because I think where a lot of people go wrong is that they can be on board with action, but they don't always take the right action or the most needed action. They don't go for the MVP, you know, the minimum viable product. They do all this extra stuff. So they're painting the house before they put the foundation on.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, exactly. I think that most people, and this is where my performance coaching comes in handy, is I'm good at a limited number of things, right? But one thing that I'm good at is looking at a system or looking at what needs to be done and picking out what bullshit people are trying to feed me. Oh, I've got to do my logo again. I'm like, no, you don't. Just literally write it in text. It's irrelevant right now. Not going to like dissuade someone from buying from you. You know, it's like just calling people on the bullshit. I think people get really caught up in things that aren't important. The first thought is, yeah, you know what? It's easier than dealing with all of that worry is just redesign my logo again.
Yeah, so that fear of success, because you do a lot of systems, and there's a lot of folks who, even if they've been at the online game for a while, they haven't really gotten some concrete systems up so they can even handle a lot of success, to be honest. There's a lot of people where if they did, they might say that, oh, I want 10 new clients in a week, but if they actually did get those 10 new clients in the week, they wouldn't know how to onboard them or sell to them or anything like that. How do you deal with people who maybe they've been putting the cart before the horse, or they haven't even gotten onto the road? Do you have a way to winnow down what actually is the thing we got to do right now versus you're just doing that because it feels safer to work on that little website?
Well, I think for those people, that doing the wrong stuff or not creating systems is a form of self-sabotage, right? Because, yeah, I want 10 customers this week. It's just an arbitrary whatever. you don't have the systems to handle them. You're just saying stuff. So what's happening is your words are not matching your actions. And if we're going to get woo, which we can for a second, I think, that confuses the universe about what you are actually asking for. And so it won't deliver you anything, because you're like saying you want something, but you're not actually taking the actions for it. And that confusion is really common. I think once you start saying the right things and taking the right actions, that's when you'll start to move forward. And I think that until, this is where the mindset thing comes in, until you're on board with actually receiving those customers and taking the actions to get them, like setting up whatever systems you need to get them, until that, it's not going to happen. And you've got to be in the right mindset to be able to go, okay, you know what? I actually do want this. I'm willing to, from a mindset perspective, I'm willing to make this leap, and I actually do want this thing that I say I want. And you and I both know that many people, we hear it all the time, say that they want to do things. Oh, wow, you travel the world? I would love to do that. I want to do that. How do I do that? And we say, here's what you do. And they go, oh, well, blah, here's the reason why I can't. And so unless you actually want the thing, it's not going to happen.
No, it really is not. And there's a lot of people who give themselves these grand timelines. I feel like the common number I hear, especially for the nomad thing, is, in 3 years. For some reason, everybody has this magical idea that in 3 years, their lives are going to be so different, but they don't actually do anything during that 3-year period to actually change that. Now, let's switch gears a little bit and talk about what I think really is difficult for a lot of folks, because the thing happens once you do the thing, you get some success, then you have to deal with the fact that you change due to success, whether that is because your lifestyle changes or your priorities change, you change. So when that happens, a lot of people are worried about what people will say. You hear all the time about the haters, and you kind of talked about how a lot of people kind of poo-pooed your idea, or even in like a nice way, they still kind of delayed you a little bit. How do you deal with both the more negative haters and also the people who are concerned, but they're kind of still limiting you, even if they're doing it in a benign way? How do you deal with those two different groups?
So I haven't really had that many, hardcore haters or whatever. Like, most people are just trying to give me unsolicited feedback. And I take it as they're just projecting their fears onto me. So I'm like, okay, maybe you wouldn't do a conference when it's 2 weeks out and you've only sold this many tickets and you haven't really got the money to pay for the venue. Maybe you wouldn't do that. I got that. I appreciate that that's scary for most people. I'm not most people. And I feel like this is the thing to do and I should push through with it, so I'm going to do it. I think most critics just are projecting their own fears. And to be honest, I appreciate that I'm not really normal in this way, but I don't really have a problem with letting go of toxic people from my life. I left like a religion and many people behind and was on my own. And then I just was like, I guess, like, I don't want this to sound as unhealthy as it sounds, but I can't really rely on other people or other people's opinions. And I can't even really trust my own opinion most of the time, because I thought that bullshit was true for many years. So I have to go and move forward as much as I can, like by logically testing concepts and trying and failing and things like that. And I realize that most people have families and their mom is telling them that they should get a real job, and they actually take that really seriously. Personally, I couldn't care less what my parents think of what I'm doing, because they don't approve of any of it anyway. So that's kind of my weird perspective on that.
Well, it's almost freeing, though. Once you leave that idea that your life and how you have to live is something where other people have buy-in, as if, there is a Congress for your life and a committee, that a steering committee, but that's not true. I kind of had the same thing when I decided to do the Nomad thing. It turned out to be way easier than I thought, because I had this idea that there was a lot of people who would be concerned or blah, 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 or what have you. But really, once you kind of like take those steps outside of your comfort zone, those steps to reclaim a lot of agency in your life, fewer and fewer people actually care. And the people who maybe react negatively, they would have done that anyway. But you do make a good point about the toxic and the negativity. There's a lot of folks, I see this a lot in a lot of Facebook groups where there's a lot of especially women entrepreneurs that have partners or families or something that don't always agree with them. So you talked a lot about visualization and stuff like that. Do you have any other tips for like confidence or how to keep yourself boosted up even when the world is saying no?
I think they don't trust themselves, they're not doing the things that they want because they don't trust that they will be able to follow through because they never followed through on it before. I think a lot of confidence is trusting yourself. And it sounds stupid. This is the stuff we always hear, but I really think that all the easiest stuff we ignore, and the things that worked for me are constant meditation and visualization and gratitude. And it's not just once in a month or something. It's every day you say the stuff. I have a checklist every morning so that I don't forget anything. And it's like, I try to read stuff that uplifts me every day. And the visualization, the gratitude, the meditations, even if it's just a little bit, to do that stuff every day and to build the practices. I feel like, going back to what we said before, when you don't trust yourself and there's other people in your life who are telling you things, you trust them about your life more than you trust yourself, there's something really wrong with that. I treat my life as something that I'm completely 100% responsible for, and I don't blame other things. No matter what happens to me, I don't blame other things. It's always my fault, 100%. And I find a lot of people just try to blame other stuff. I think to be able to have confidence, you have to trust yourself completely. And any feedback, negative or positive, that I get, I use it as kind of like an advisor. I have advisors in my life, and I take on their comments and thoughts and bad feedback as well that I get from whoever. And then I go, cool, I'm going to take all of that into consideration, and then I'm going to make my decision based on what I want and what I think is best to do, like the best thing. You've got to do what's best for you.
That's a good point about not just trusting yourself, but having to live your own life, because there's a lot of people who can give you advice, but they're not going to be the ones who will deal with the consequences of you taking or not taking that action.
Exactly.
And a lot of people do give you advice because they want you to feel safe because they've failed. There also are, depending on where you come from, a lot of people who give you advice because they get a little bit triggered by somebody else's success because they might have had a dream and maybe they never took the leap and stuff like that. So it's always good to curate who you actually go to advice for and why. Like if you have a cousin or something that is always really negative and they poo-poo on every idea, then they're not the person to talk about. If you have a baby startup idea, like that is not the person to go to because they're going to crap all over that dream.
Yeah, and the reality is most people aren't fulfilling what they want to be fulfilling, and they're numbing it with whatever TV shows, sex. There's tons of people do to kind of not be a part of that reality or pretend it's not happening, but they have stuff that they want to do and it didn't work or it's not working or they don't feel good enough about themselves to try it. I'm not saying that this is like your whole family. I'm not saying this is particular people. I'm just saying a lot of people who shit on your idea do it for those reasons rather than because it's anything to do with the idea. Like it's rarely anything to do with the idea. So I realized that, and ever since I have just been on my own and I know what is the best thing for me to do next. Does that make sense?
That does make sense. And it's one thing that I feel like when you start talking to people, at least in my opinion, because I've done this podcast for a while, I've talked to entrepreneurs for a while, nomads, that sort of thing. And one thing, whether you're an artist or you're a nomad or you're an entrepreneur, there is, for all of those people, there's a moment where you have to take that leap of faith and you have to be able to go, you know what, this could all fail. And even if it did, that's okay, because I at least can say, even if it's something where you're sitting at the bar and you're like, I could have been a contender, you don't have to ever be that guy because you know exactly that you stepped out, you tried to be a contender, and at least you always know that you did that. But some people can't embrace that fact that they might fail a couple of times before they succeed. But that's such a common story. Like, look at Oprah. She was fired from her first TV broadcast job. And now she's pretty much a one-woman mogul, Yeah. I want to get your opinion on failure because I feel like you have a very bull-like mentality when it comes to failure. But talk a little bit about that.
So I think that most people's problem with failure is they think that once they fail, that's it. Oh my God, I failed. I must be a terrible person. And they attach a bunch of meaning about themselves to the failure. I don't know why people take it so seriously, because it doesn't mean anything about you. Like, the thing failed, the business idea failed, the whatever failed. It's nothing about you. And people take it and they're like, well, that's it. That was it. That was my one shot. And now I'm going to go back to whatever shitty thing I was doing before, because you get more than one shot, right? Like, yeah, that thing might not have worked. Maybe you lost all your money, maybe whatever. I have been literally homeless and thinking that I was just the worst failure ever. Guess what? I was like 31 years old or something. Like, it's fine. I still have time. Unless you're literally on your deathbed, you still have time. And most things, you only fail because you didn't learn enough. There was something left for you to learn. So it's just an opportunity for more learning. And I fail in stuff every day because I try stuff and I'm not afraid of the failure. Sure, I don't invest 50 grand in a new thing every day because A, I don't have that, and B, that's silly. But if you fail in anything, like even if it's just putting out an offer and saying, hey, does anyone want to buy this? Or if it's asking a girl on a date, I don't know, just small things. If you build up your resilience to failure, I think that that's a skill that most people don't have, because they just take it personally immediately and give up. And people are so scared of failure that people, even when they say they want to do something, oh, I'm going to lose 20 pounds or I'm going to whatever. I don't remember the statistic, but people who say that, a large percentage of them give up immediately before they've even tried once. So even if you just try once at something, you're already ahead of the game than most people. And if you try more than once, obviously you're putting yourself in like the top percentile of the world, and you have a much higher chance of success.
It is so true. People do take failure so personally, and they act like they got only one shot. So I feel like that is one of the best things that people can kind of take on this, is that you can have a really even mindset about failure, trial and error, that whole thing, without making it the end of the world.
Well, it's about self-love again, isn't it? Because if you know that you're great regardless of everything, then when you have a setback, the reason that people are so, it just occurred to me, when people have a setback or a failure, they take it so personally because they really do think it's about them, and they thought they're a failure anyway. So it's just confirming their suspicions, and that's why they take it. So that's why if someone says something to you that's not true, you don't really give a shit. If I told you something that was totally ridiculous, you would just be like, okay, Beck, I don't really give a shit, right? You wouldn't care. But if I told you something that you secretly believed about yourself, then you would get really upset. And I think that that's one of the reasons why failure is such a thing, because people are scared in the first place. And then when they fail, they're like, I fucking knew it. I knew this wasn't going to work. I'm never trying again.
Oh, that's a good point, where you're almost like validating. You're looking for the validation for these negative thoughts, for this negative opinion of yourself.
Yeah, people decide it. We all decide when we're kids stuff about ourselves. Usually, in my experience, 99% of the time, it's that we're not good enough. So we're like going through life since we were little kids, looking for reasons to validate that we're not good enough, just evidence. And we pile this evidence up into big, massive mountains of things. See, I knew I wasn't good enough because this guy dumped me. See, I knew I wasn't good enough because I lost this job, or because whatever. And we just keep doing it so that we keep believing the story that we told ourselves. That was a digression, but I'm very passionate about that topic.
It's a good digression. I feel like that's something that is so true. We look for that confirmation of our own bias, and that negative stuff. What did they say in the Army, that 5 attaboys equals 1, dumbass, where you can compliment somebody over and over, but that one negative thing that somehow drowns out every positive feedback that you got from a thing.
Exactly. This whole conversation is about changing those beliefs that you made up a long time ago. And that is why coaching and therapy and all this kind of stuff is helpful, not just because you need to talk about things, which most people think that's all it is. It's to remove those limiting beliefs that you have. And once you remove those blocks, you can move forward at insane speeds. I mean, I removed a bunch of them. And I do a lot of stuff, and I know that there's a bunch of them I still need to remove. And I'm so excited for when I remove them, because I'm going to propel forward like a jet. It's amazing. And once you know that about yourself, it just becomes exciting rather than scary or worrisome.
I agree. You can hack your brain. That is a scientific fact. You can hack your brain. You can think about it in a metaphysical way or in a scientific way or what have you, but you can hack your brain. It's true. I found that with myself. Once I stopped arguing with myself or indulged in very negative self-talk, I no longer had to negotiate with myself for every decision or every movement or every purchase or every time that I spent invested in a project. People don't realize that. And it is a journey where, at least for me, because I now hang out with a lot of people who've done some sort of form of personal development. It's very interesting when I work with people who I can tell have not done that when we're working on a project together, because it seems like they do insult themselves during a lot of different things, or if they get a negative feedback or something like that, it becomes this sort of them confirming, oh yeah, I suck. And it becomes where if they're saying that verbally, imagine what's going on in their head. If that is what is really dominating your conscious mind, is just a spew of self-loathing, then that is part of your brain that is not going towards strategy. It's not going towards priority. It's not going towards those higher executive functions that you need to run a business or have a more designed or curated life. You know, whatever your thing is, whether it's business or getting a new job or pursuing an art or making a nonprofit, you're not able to focus on those goals if you're looking inward in sort of a self-absorbed way, looking for every clue that, you know, you're a fuck stick. Well, I don't know if I can say fuck stick on my own show, but I think I'm going to go with it.
I think that's loud. You're, you know, it's like basically negative visualization, right? It works just as well as positive visualization. Like what you think about comes to pass. And if you're constantly visualizing, like I was visualizing Queer Hustle and standing in front of all the people, and then it happened. If I was visualizing like crying on the floor and how it was never going to work, I'm pretty sure that would have happened too. So what you're saying is totally correct. I think that the negative self-talk is super duper real, especially when we compare ourselves to other people, which is kind of an epidemic right now with Instagram and whatnot the young kids are doing nowadays. People compare themselves to other people and then they go, oh my God, I'm not good enough. Remember that time when I was young? And then, I mean, often we forget about what the time was when we were young, but we're just telling ourselves that we're not good enough, especially stacked up against other people. And then that pervades into, oh, I want to quit my job and travel the world, but I can't because I'm not enough. Look at all this evidence.
Yeah, and I would also say, and this is more of a niche note, but for folks like us who are queer in some fashion, you know, sometimes we look for ways to already exclude ourselves by saying, oh, you know, those people do that because they have this, and this privilege. And then we'll completely ignore the fact that there's all these queer nomads or queer entrepreneurs or people who are just like us, from like the same economic background, the same sexuality, the same race, or blah, blah, blah. And then we'll be like, oh, but they must have done something else that makes them the exception, as opposed to something that could be the rule if I wanted it to be. When we're talking about making your dreams happen, I notice that there's a lot of folks that do kind of rely on, especially millennials, especially those who are more like globally conscious, they use a lot of very intellectual things to sort of talk themselves out of it by saying, oh, well, there's this socioeconomic barrier, and well, there's this, you know, ethical concern, as opposed to being like, girl, just set aside your intellectual bullshit. Don't look for reasons. It reminds me of a post you did today about if you argue for your limitations, you get to keep them. I thought that was a really good quote you shared, because I think a lot of people will do the negative visualization, which I've never heard before, but that's a great term, and think of all these clever ways to psych themselves out.
Yeah, no, you're exactly right. People, there's always going to be things to be distracted by, you know, oh, I can't because people are starving in this country. Like, people just get distracted. And I think what you have to do is decide what you want out of your life, because certainly no one's going to just tell you. You're not going to bump into it one day in the supermarket. You have to decide what you want, and then you have to literally say no to everything that's not that. And so many things aren't that. And people are like, well, here's what I want, but here's an excuse and here's another excuse. It's exactly what you're saying. And it really is a mindset thing to get out of that. I don't know any real strategies rather than just going for what you want and completely ignoring that stuff, because there will always be reasons, and it's just about ignoring them.
I would agree. Somebody once gave me good advice on your dream has to feel more real than your reality. If that's what you want, that's how you have to treat it. Which I feel like is a beautiful note to sort of transition our interview, because we've talked so much about mindset. We've talked about being someone that can kick your own butt. Because I think that's what a lot of people need, is not just that accountability, but also that little bit of a mental slap up the side of the head to be like, oi, buddy, go on, stiff upper lip. But let's switch this up. And for all those folks who are like, that sounds great, but I just need to know more about this Beck person, Beck Power, so I can get powered up and go through my blocks. How about you tell all the folks listening at home where they can find you, what you're up to now? Because you're always up to something, but what are you up to now?
I sure am. So my website is beckpower.me. Pretty much how it sounds, beckpower.me. My projects are on there. I'm connectable on Facebook and Instagram. If you're interested in Queer Hustle, you can check out queerhustle.com. If you're interested in digital nomad stuff, you can go to digitalnomad.me. Yes, I got that domain name. Thank you very much. But yeah, that's how you connect with me. I am right now doing performance coaching, like I said, so you can book a free call with me on my website. It's pretty easy to do. And even just if you want to figure out exactly what's going on in your brain, I can do like a strategy call and just see if we want to work together. If you just need like a little boost, I can talk to you about that. So that's where I am. And it's a real pleasure to talk to you as usual.
Beck, it's always great talking to you. And honestly, even for the folks who still need some time to warm up to coaching or whatever they want to accomplish, I feel like Beck is still worth a pretty good follow, because you do post some snappy food for thought. And I do appreciate that, Beck. You are a breath of fresh air in the coaching world, and I can't wait to see what you do next.
Thanks, Sammy G.
Thanks for being on my show, and thank you all for listening. As always, I'm Sammy Gardner, and this is the Career Kickstart Show. Bye! Change your career, change your life at CareerKickstartAcademy.com.